Hey everybody, welcome back. Session 4 of this course, Did Jesus Rise from the Dead? And this session, we are talking about the historical accounts of Jesus' death. So if you remember, we've been going through this phrase, 500 women died following the body. And so 500 witnesses to Jesus after the resurrection. Women, the first to discover that Jesus had resurrected. And now let's talk about died. The historical accounts about Jesus' death. And so we're going to look at 4 reasons why we can believe Jesus was really killed on a Roman cross. 4 reasons we can believe that Jesus was really killed on a Roman cross. The first one is that we have multiple sources record Jesus' death by crucifixion. Multiple sources record Jesus' death by crucifixion. Now, there's many more, several. For the sake of time, I'm just going to share one quote, but this is a quote from Tacitus, who was a writer at the time, and he recorded this in one of his writings. He said, "Nero fastened the guilt of the burning of Rome and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate." And so we can see from this historical source that there was this group of people, Christians, who they were called, whose leader was named Christus, or the Christ. And this Christus suffered extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius under Pontius Pilate, which matches in line with the historical account of what we read in the Gospels, that this person, Jesus, was killed on a Roman cross by crucifixion and suffered under the reign, or during the reign, of Pontius Pilate, one of the Roman leaders. And what's interesting as well is we don't have any historical accounts saying that Jesus died in a different way, or that he didn't die, really. Everything that we have points to the fact that Jesus was really killed. What's amazing as well is that these reports are early. What's crazy is we're looking at this passage kind of throughout 1 Corinthians 15. And this passage, the main chunk of it, is actually a creed or a saying that Christians at the time developed as a way of remembering and being able to explain the message that they believed in. And throughout a lot of research, a lot of scholars, both Christian and non-Christian, have dated that creed, that phrase or statement to date as early as to a few months or within 3, 4, 5 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus. And so very early, this message is getting out there that Jesus did die on a cross, and Christians were talking about it, and they shared that news and that message with each other. So we have very early reports, along with, of course, all the writings from the New Testament that range from a few years to a maximum of 50 or 60 years after the death of Jesus. So all these reports are coming in very early, and historically speaking, very close to when Jesus actually would have died. So multiple sources record Jesus' death by crucifixion. The reports are early. The third reason is that the details are embarrassing. The details are embarrassing. Honestly, Jesus appears weak in these gospel accounts. And at the time, the Jewish people were expecting a savior, a Messiah, a ruler to come and to reign with power and authority, and to bring a sword and strike down their enemies. And Jesus was not that. He was humble. He was weak. He suffered. He experienced emotions with humans and wept with them and felt their pain and their hurt. And Jesus appears weak and he suffers. And no one would talk about their king or their God in a way to make them sound weak unless that's what actually happened. Unless Jesus really did hurt, unless Jesus did feel the pain of other people, unless he really did go through a horrible crucifixion, a beating, and all of these things, unless it actually happened. But along with that, we can also trust that these details are true because not only does Jesus appear weak, but the disciples, his closest followers, appear weak in them as well. You see them falling asleep in the garden the night that Jesus is going to be arrested. You see them abandoning him after he's arrested. You see one of his best friends, Peter, denying to even know the man several times leading up to this. So the writers are even writing about themselves in a negative way. Again, why would you do that unless they were just telling the truth? The fourth reason is that the medical evidence backs it. A few years ago, the Journal of the American Medical Association actually released an article. The name of the article, I love this, the name of the article is On the Physical Death of Jesus Christ. And this group of doctors, they walked through each detail that's recorded in the Gospels and each event that Jesus goes through, and how each piece of it, adding on this pain and suffering that he was experiencing physically, would have led to his death. So they detail things that we read in the Bible, like the sweating of blood, or this medical condition, kind of this phenomenon that's called hematidrosis, of which Jesus is under so much stress that he begins to sweat blood, to being scourged and whipped under the Roman authorities, to being hung on a cross and the asphyxiation that comes with it, and having to breathe a certain way and being really restricted, and how each and every piece of that and more would have certainly led to the death of anybody, and including Jesus. It would have been very unlikely to survive. And based on the historical accounts that we have of it, we can be certain that Jesus would have died on a Roman cross. I'm going to share a couple quotes with you. One is from Gerd Ludman, who's an atheist scholar, not a Christian. He says, Jesus' death as a consequence of crucifixion is indisputable. Another one from Paula Fredrickson, who's a skeptical scholar from Boston University, said, the single most solid fact about Jesus' life is his death. He was executed by the Roman prefect Pilate on or around Passover, in the manner Rome reserved particularly for political insurrectionists, namely crucifixion. The most certain thing, the most indisputable thing, is the fact that Jesus did in fact die on a cross. And so really every scholar, virtually, Christian or not Christian, regardless of their religion or their worldview, agrees that this man, Jesus of Nazareth, died by crucifixion. And that is a very sobering reminder of what God was willing to endure, considering that Jesus claimed to do all of this for humanity. He claimed to do it for me and for you. And so we can trust that Jesus really did die. He really did suffer in many ways, but ultimately by death on a Roman cross, hanging in a way that he claimed was for humanity. So let's go back to our phrase one more time. 500 women died following the body. 500 witnesses to Jesus post-resurrection. Women, the first to discover that Jesus had risen and share the good news, died. Jesus actually died. It's a historical event that can be confirmed for several reasons. So thanks again for watching. Hope you've been blessed by this content so far. I want to thank you again, and we'll see you in the next part, session 5, where we'll talk about the followers of Jesus. See you soon.